My sister called me useless at our baby shower. Then her doctor asked if I deliver. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Sometimes the person who calls you worthless ends up needing you more than they ever imagined. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply showing them exactly who you've always been. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. My name is Natasha Winters. I am 32 years old and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also the person my family has consistently overlooked, dismissed, and relegated to the shadows, while my younger sister Celeste has basked in their adoration her entire life. The morning of Celeste's baby shower dawned gray and drizzling, which felt appropriate given my mood. I stood in my apartment bathroom, staring at my reflection as I applied mascara with steady hands that belied the tremor in my chest. Today would be another performance, another day of smiling while my family celebrated everything I wasn't. Celeste was 28, married to a successful architect named Marcus, and carrying what my mother had declared would be the most beautiful grandchild in the world. She was also the golden child who could do no wrong, while I remained the eldest daughter who had somehow failed to live up to every expectation they'd never bothered to clearly articulate. The drive to my parents' house in Myers Park took me through neighborhoods where I'd once imagined I might live someday. Stately homes with manicured lawns and luxury cars parked in circular driveways. Dreams I'd harbored before medical school debt and a specialized career path that paid well but didn't impress at dinner parties had reshaped my reality. I am a neonatal nurse practitioner. I spend my days in the NICU caring for the smallest and most vulnerable patients in the hospital. My work requires precision, compassion, and ability to remain calm under pressure that would break most people. But to my family, this translated simply as works with babies, and somehow ranked lower than Celeste's career as a social media influencer who photographed her breakfast for a living. The parking situation at my parents' house was predictably chaotic. Cars lined the street for 3 blocks, forcing me to park near the elementary school and walk back through the persistent drizzle. By the time I reached the front door, my carefully styled hair had begun to curl at the edges and my navy dress was spotted with raindrops. The house buzzed with feminine voices and laughter. Balloons in soft pink and gold bobbed from every available surface, and someone had strung fairy lights throughout the living room despite the early afternoon hour. The scene was Instagram perfect, which meant Celeste had either planned every detail herself or hired someone to execute her vision flawlessly. Tasha, there you are. My mother, Patricia, appeared beside me with the efficiency of someone who had been watching for my arrival. She wore a cream-colored wrap dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment and carried herself with the poise of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Traffic was terrible, I lied, accepting her brief hug. The truth was, I'd sat in my car for 15 minutes, gathering the emotional fortitude to walk through those doors. Well, you're here now. Celeste looks absolutely radiant. She's in the living room holding court with her college friends. They're all so successful. It's wonderful to see. The subtle dig landed exactly where she'd intended. My mother had perfected the art of seeming supportive while simultaneously highlighting my shortcomings. It was a skill she'd honed over decades. A practice. I made my way through clusters of women I recognized from various family gatherings over the years. Celeste's sorority sisters, her yoga instructor, neighbors from her upscale South End condo. They all possessed that polished look of women who had married well or built careers that afforded them regular spa treatments and designer handbags. Celeste sat in the center of the living room like a queen holding court, her dark hair arranged in loose waves and her maternity dress a shade of blush pink that complemented her carefully applied makeup. At 7 months pregnant, she glowed with the kind of ethereal beauty that pregnancy magazines feature on their covers. Natasha, she called out when she spotted me, her voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. Come meet everyone. Ladies, this is my sister I was telling you about. I approached the circle of women, most of whom held mimosas or elaborate mocktails in crystal glasses. The introductions that followed confirmed what I already knew. These were women who measured success in terms I'd never prioritized. One ran a boutique marketing firm. Another had married a tech executive and now focused on philanthropic work. Another had recently launched a luxury skincare line that was taking off like crazy throughout the Southeast dot. When it came time for me to share what I did, I watched their expressions shift from polite interest to confusion to something that looked almost like pity. "Oh, that must be so rewarding," one of them said, using the tone people reserve for discussing volunteer work or hobbies rather than careers requiring advanced degrees and specialized training. "It is," I replied, choosing not to elaborate. I'd learned years ago that explaining the complexity of neonatal care to people who weren't genuinely interested was an exercise in futility. The gift opening ceremony began shortly after, and I positioned myself on the outskirts of the gathering, nursing a glass of sparkling water and watching Celeste exclaim over each carefully wrapped present. A designer stroller that cost more than most people's monthly rent, a complete nursery bedding set in organic cotton, a baby monitor system that included video streaming and biometric tracking. When she reached my gift, a practical collection of newborn essentials I'd assembled based on years of professional experience, her smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Oh, how thoughtful," she said, holding up the organic cotton onesies and burp cloths. "These will be so useful." The word useful hung in the air like a judgment. Not beautiful, not exciting, not Instagram-worthy, just useful. The same word that had defined my role in this family for as long as I could remember. After the gifts came the games, each one designed to showcase how well the guests knew the expectant mother, or how cleverly they could guess various baby-related trivia. I participated with the minimum required enthusiasm, my mind already calculating how long I needed to stay before I could politely excuse myself, but then came the moment that would change everything. We were playing a game where guests had to guess how many jelly beans were in a baby bottle when my aunt, Linda, made an observation that sent ripples of laughter through the room. "You know," she said, gesturing toward me with her mocktail, "it's funny how different sisters can be. Celeste here is about to become a mother, living her best life with that handsome husband of hers. And then there's Natasha, still single and just sort of floating through life without any real direction." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. I'd had years of practice absorbing these casual cruelties. "Oh, Aunt Linda?" Celeste laughed, the sound light and musical. "Natasha's doing fine. She's just ... different. Some people are meant for big, important lives, and others are meant to be more in the background, you know? There's nothing wrong with being useful in your own small way." The conversation moved on, but those words echoed in my head. Useful in your own small way. As if my career, my expertise, my years of education and training amounted to nothing more than a footnote in the larger story of our family. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead found myself standing in my childhood bedroom, staring at the walls that had once held my high school academic awards and college acceptance letters. None of those achievements hung there now. They'd been replaced by framed photos of Celeste's various accomplishments, her college graduation, her engagement party, her wedding, her latest magazine feature about Portland's most influential young entrepreneurs. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen to see a text from my colleague Dr. Rebecca Martinez. "Emergency C-section coming in. Twins at 34 weeks. Could use your expertise if you're available." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "On my way." I returned to the living room where the party was winding down, women gathering their purses and offering final congratulations to the glowing mother-to-be. I made my rounds, thanking my mother for hosting and congratulating Celeste once more. "Leaving so soon?" my sister asked, though her attention was already drifting toward her phone, no doubt planning how to document the day's festivities for her social media followers. "We're called," I said simply. "Of course it did." She laughed that musical laugh. "Again, well, thanks for coming. And for the gift. Like I said, it'll be very useful." I drove back to the hospital through the late afternoon traffic, my mind replaying the day's events. The dismissive comments, the casual cruelty, the way my own family had reduced my life's work to something merely useful in a small way. NIC was a different world entirely. Here, my skills mattered. Here, the difference between competence and excellence could mean the difference between life and death. I scrubbed in and joined Dr. Martinez for the emergency delivery in my hands. Steady and my focus absolute as we worked to bring 2 premature babies safely into the world. "Thank God you are available," Rebecca said as we finished stabilizing the twins. "Their lung development is touch and go. They're going to need round-the-clock monitoring for the next several days." I nodded, already mentally preparing for the intensive care these babies would require. This was what I did. This was who I was. Not useful in some small, forgettable way, but essential in moments when it mattered most. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. Celeste's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with the immediate alertness that came from years of emergency calls. "Tasha?" Her voice was tight with panic. "Something's wrong. I'm bleeding, and Marcus is out of town, and I can't reach my doctor, and I don't know what to do." I was out of bed and pulling on clothes before she finished. Explaining, "Are you having contractions?" "I think so. Maybe, I don't know. This isn't supposed to happen for another month." "I'm coming to get you. We're going to the hospital." The drive to Celeste's condo took 12 minutes that felt like an hour. I found her sitting on her bathroom floor, tears streaming down her face, all traces of her usual composed beauty replaced by raw fear. "It's too early," she kept saying. "The baby isn't ready. What if something happens? What if I lose her?" I helped her to the car, my training taking over as I assessed her condition and called ahead to the hospital. During the drive, I kept my voice calm and reassuring while monitoring her symptoms and contractions. "You're going to be okay," I told her. "Both of you are going to be okay." But privately, I was concerned. Her symptoms suggested possible placental abruption, a serious condition that could endanger both mother and baby. We needed to get her to the hospital immediately. The emergency. Room team was waiting when we arrived, and I provided a quick medical summary before stepping back to let them work. But as they prepared to transfer Celeste to the maternity ward, the attending physician approached me. "Are you family?" Dr. Patricia Chun asked. "Her sister. And you're medical?" "Neonatal nurse practitioner. I work in the NICU here." Dr. Chun nodded, her expression serious. "Good, we're dealing with placental abruption at 36 weeks. The baby needs to be delivered now, but our on-call neonatologist is stuck in surgery with another emergency. We could really use someone with your expertise in the delivery room." The irony of the moment wasn't lost on me. The sister who had called my life's work merely useful in a small way now needed that expertise to save her daughter's life. "Of course," I said without hesitation. The next 2 hours unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of medical precision. While the obstetric team focused on Celeste, I prepared for the arrival of a baby who would likely need immediate intensive care. I set up the neonatal resuscitation equipment, coordinated with the respiratory therapist, and briefed the NICU. Team on standby. When baby Lily arrived, she was small, pale, and struggling to breathe. I took over her care immediately, my hands working with the practiced efficiency of someone who had navigated countless similar emergencies. "Respiratory distress," I announced, initiating positive pressure ventilation. "Heart rate's good, but she's working too hard to breathe." The next several minutes were critical. I managed Lily's breathing support, stabilized her blood sugar, and coordinated her transfer to the NICU while keeping Celeste informed of every step. "She's beautiful," I told my sister as we prepared to move Lily upstairs. "Small but strong. Her lungs just need a little help while they finish developing." Celeste gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Will she be okay?" "She's going to be fine," I said, and I meant it. "But she needs to stay in the NICU for a few weeks while we help her grow stronger." Over the following days, I found myself in an unexpected position. As Lily's primary nurse practitioner, I was responsible for her daily care, her feeding schedule, her medication management, and her gradual transition from intensive support to independent breathing and eating. Celeste visited every day, often staying for hours beside the isolette where her daughter slept under warming lights, connected to monitors that tracked every heartbeat and breath. The composed, camera-ready woman I'd known was replaced by someone more vulnerable, more human. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted one afternoon, gesturing toward the complex array of medical equipment surrounding her daughter. The alarms, the numbers on the screens, what all these medications do. "I feel so helpless." "You're not helpless," I said, adjusting Lily's feeding tube. "You're her mother. That's the most important thing you can be right now. But you understand. All of this, you know how to take care of her. I don't even know if she's getting better or worse half the time." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. The perfect makeup was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and the pale complexion of someone who had been spending her days under fluorescent hospital lights. Her usually immaculate hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. She looked exhausted, worried and utterly devoted to the tiny person sleeping in the clear plastic box between us. "She's getting stronger every day," I said, pulling up a chair beside her. "See how her oxygen levels have improved since Monday? And she's gaining weight consistently now. These are all very good signs." "How do you do this?" Celeste asked. "How do you stay calm when babies are this sick? How do you deal with parents like me who don't know anything and ask the same questions over and over?" I considered the question carefully, because this is what I trained for. This is what I'm good at. And because families like yours deserve to have someone who understands what's happening. Someone who can translate all the medical terminology into something that makes sense. "I never really understood what you did," she said quietly. "I mean, I knew you worked with babies, but I didn't understand what that actually meant." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lily sleep. The NICU was never completely quiet. There were always monitors beeping, ventilators whooshing, nurses checking on patients, but it had its own rhythm, its own sense of purposeful calm. "Kasia," Celeste said eventually, "I owe you an apology." I looked at her, surprised by the serious tone in her voice. "I've been a terrible sister," she continued. "I've dismissed your work, your life choices, your value as a person. I've made you feel small and unimportant, and I justified it by telling myself that we were just different, that we valued different things." She paused, tears gathering in her eyes. "But watching you these past few days, seeing how you take care of Lily, how you explain everything to me with such patience, how the other nurses and doctors respect your opinion and defer to your expertise, I realize I've been wrong about everything." I felt something shift inside my chest, a loosening of tension I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. "You're not living some small, useful little life," she said. "You're saving lives. You're giving families hope when they're facing their worst fears. You're an expert in something that matters more than anything I've ever done." "Celeste, no. Let me finish." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I called you useless at my baby shower. I made you feel like your life didn't matter, like your achievements weren't important. And then when I needed you most, when my daughter needed you most, you were the one person who could help us." She gestured toward Lily, who was stirring slightly in her sleep. "She's alive because of you. She's getting stronger every day because of your knowledge and your skill and your dedication. How could I have ever called that useless?" The apology I never expected to hear hung between us in the soft light of the NICU. I felt years of resentment and hurt beginning to dissolve, replaced by something I hadn't felt toward my sister in a very long time. Genuine affection. "I forgive you," I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness didn't erase the impact of those years of dismissal and casual cruelty. It didn't undo the damage to my self-worth or the way I'd learned to minimize my own accomplishments to avoid disappointing a family that seemed determined to find me lacking. The real transformation came over the following weeks as I continued to care for Lily. Celeste visited every day, and gradually other family members began to appear. My parents, my Aunt Linda, cousins and family friends who had heard about the dramatic early delivery and the baby's stay in the NICU. Each time someone new arrived, Celeste introduced me the same way. This is my sister, Natasha. She's Lily's nurse practitioner. She's the one taking care of her. But it was more than just the introduction. It was the tone of pride in her voice, the way she explained my role to visitors, the respect she showed for my medical opinions. Natasha, says Lily, might be able to try bottle feeding next week, she would tell our mother. She's been tracking her progress and all her numbers look good. Or, Natasha explained how the breathing support works. Did you know she has specialized training in neonatal respiratory care? She's basically an expert on premature baby lungs. I watched our parents' perception of me shift in real time. My father, who had always seemed vaguely disappointed that I hadn't followed a more traditional path to marriage and motherhood, began asking detailed questions about my work and education. My mother started introducing me to her friends as my daughter of a nurse practitioner who specializes in premature babies. The change was subtle but profound. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen by my family. But the most significant moment came 3 weeks after Lily's birth, when she was finally ready to be discharged. I was completing her final assessment, documenting her weight, gain and feeding tolerance, when Celeste approached me with an unusual request. I want to ask you something, she said, and I want you to know that it's okay to say no. I looked up from my paperwork, curious. Marcus and I have been talking, and we'd like you to be Lily's godmother. Not just a name, but really involved in her life. We want her to know her aunt, to understand what you do, to see that women can be anything they want to be. She paused, then continued. And honestly, we want your medical expertise in our lives. We want to know that if something happens, if she gets sick or hurt, we have someone we trust who can help us navigate whatever comes next. The request caught me off guard. For so many years, I'd felt like an outsider in my own family, invited to events but never truly included in the important moments or decisions. I'd be honored, I said, and I meant it. The day of Lily's discharge, I helped Celeste and Marcus prepare for the transition home. I went over her medication schedule, demonstrated proper feeding techniques, and provided them with detailed written instructions for her continued care. Are you sure you don't want to just come live with us? Marcus joked as we loaded the car seat into their BMW. We could convert the guest room into a live-in medical suite. But beneath the humor, I could see genuine anxiety about taking their daughter home without the safety net of round-the-clock medical monitoring. You're going to be fine, I assured them. You have my number, the pediatrician's number, and very detailed instructions for every scenario. Plus, I'll be checking in regularly. As I watched them drive away with their precious cargo, I felt a satisfaction deeper than any I'd experienced in my professional life. This wasn't just another successful NICU case. This was my niece, my family, my chance to be truly essential in someone's life. The follow-up visits confirmed what I'd expected. Lily thrived. She gained weight steadily, met all her developmental milestones, and grew into a healthy, curious baby who seemed to recognize my voice from all those hours I'd spent talking to her in the NICU. Celeste documented everything, of course, but her social media presence had evolved. Instead of just showcasing her own life, she began featuring stories about premature babies, NICU families, and the medical professionals who cared for them. She used her platform to raise awareness about neonatal care and to highlight the expertise required to help the smallest patients survive and thrive. Did you know that neonatal nurse practitioners need a master's degree and specialized certification? She wrote in one post that featured a photo of me holding Lily. My sister spent years training to become an expert in caring for premature and critically ill newborns. When my daughter was born early and needed intensive care, I realized how lucky we are to have people like Natasha dedicating their lives to saving babies. The post went viral, at least by her standards generating Hundreds of comments from parents who had experienced NICU stays with their own children. Many shared their own stories of gratitude for the medical professionals who had cared for their babies during the most frightening time of their lives. Reading those comments, I realized something important. My work mattered to far more people than just my immediate patients and their families. There were thousands of parents out there who understood exactly what I did, who valued the specialized knowledge and skills I'd spent years developing. I began speaking at conferences, sharing case studies and best practices with other neonatal care providers. I wrote articles for professional journals about innovative approaches to premature infant care. I mentored new nurse practitioners entering the field. My career, which had once felt small and invisible to my family, became a source of professional recognition and personal fulfillment that extended far beyond the walls of any single hospital. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in my relationship with Celeste. We began spending time together outside of Lily's medical appointments, real sister time that we hadn't shared since we were children. We discovered that beneath the surface differences in our life choices, we actually had more in common than either of us had realized. She was intelligent and thoughtful, qualities that had been overshadowed by her focus on appearance and social media success. I was funnier and more adaptable than my serious professional demeanor typically revealed. We both cared deeply about family, about making a positive impact in the world, about building meaningful relationships. One evening, about 6 months after Lily's birth, Celeste and I were having dinner at a small restaurant in her neighborhood when she brought up the baby shower again. "I still think about that day," she said, twirling pasta around her fork, "about what I said, how I treated you. I was so focused on appearing successful, on impressing all those women, that I completely lost sight of what actually matters. You don't need to keep apologizing," I said. "We've moved past that." "I know, but I want you to understand something." She put down her fork and looked directly at me. I think I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? Of your certainty. Of the fact that you always knew what you wanted to do with your life, and you went after it regardless of what anyone else thought. I spent so much time chasing approval, trying to build a life that looked impressive from the outside, that I never stopped to consider whether it was actually fulfilling. She gestured around the restaurant, at the other diners absorbed in their own conversations. "You chose a career that matters, that saves lives, that requires real expertise and skill. I chose a career that depends on other people's validation, on constantly performing for an audience that doesn't really know me. Your work has value too," I said. "You reach people, you influence them, you create content that brings them joy or inspiration." "Maybe," she said, "but what you do is permanent. The babies you save grow up and live full lives because of your intervention. The families you help never forget what you did for them. That's a legacy I can't match with all the Instagram followers in the world." I realized then that the revenge I imagined wanting some dramatic comeuppance where my family finally recognized my worth had been replaced by something much more valuable, genuine understanding and respect. The universe's twisted sense of humor had indeed played out, but not in the way I'd expected. Instead of a moment of vindictive satisfaction, I'd experienced something far more profound, the recognition that my worth had never actually depended on my family's approval. My expertise was real whether they acknowledged it or not. My career was meaningful whether they understood it or not. My contributions mattered whether they celebrated them or not, but having their recognition, their genuine appreciation for who I was and what I did, made everything sweeter. Lily is now 18 months old, a vibrant, healthy toddler who shows no signs of her early arrival. She babbles constantly, takes tentative steps between furniture, and lights up whenever she sees me. Celeste often jokes that Lily's first word was probably going to be auntie rather than mama or dada. Last week, Celeste called to tell me she was pregnant again. "I wanted you to be the first to know," she said, "because I want you involved from the beginning this time. I want you to be there for the ultrasounds, the appointments, everything. And if there are any complications, I want you to be the one managing the medical side of things. Are you asking me to be your unofficial medical advisor for this pregnancy? I asked, touched by her request. I'm asking you to be the sister I should have always recognized you were, she said. The expert, the protector, the person I trust. Most in the world to keep my family safe. As I hung up the phone, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The pain of being dismissed and undervalued had been real, and it had taken years to heal from the casual cruelty of family members, who should have been my biggest supporters, but that pain had also motivated me to excel in my field, to build a career based on genuine expertise rather than external validation, to find fulfillment in work that mattered regardless of whether anyone was watching or applauding. The revenge, I'd once craved the moment when my family would realize how wrong they'd been about me, had evolved into something far more meaningful. The opportunity to be truly essential in their lives, not because they finally saw my worth, but because my worth had always existed, independent of their recognition. Sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't proving people wrong. It's being so secure in your own value that their opinions become irrelevant. It's reaching a place where you no longer need their validation because you've found something more important: self-respect, professional fulfillment, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you make a real difference in the world. The woman who was once called useless at a baby shower had become the person her family turned to in their most critical moments. But more importantly, she had become someone who no longer needed anyone else to define her worth. That transformation, I realized, was the most elegant form of silent revenge of all. Have you ever been betrayed by the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there needs to hear it.